Some movies don't wait to impress you halfway through. They slap you in the face from the very first frame. The best directors know that the opening scene isn't just a doorway into a story. It's a declaration of war on your attention span. So let me ask, when was the last time a film hooked you instantly? Today, we're diving into 15 openings so daring, so unforgettable, they didn't just start the movie. They made cinema history. Sunset Boulevard, 1950. A dead man floating face down in a Hollywood swimming pool narrates his own story. That's how Billy Wilder decided to begin Sunset Boulevard. Forget gentle introductions or a slow build. Wilder went straight for the jugular. Joe Gillis, a washed-up screenwriter, tells us how he wound up face first in chlorinated water, and suddenly, you're not asking who killed him, but how the story spirals into this haunting finale. The technical achievement of that opening pool shot alone deserves applause. Wilder's crew placed a massive mirror at the bottom of the pool to capture Gillis's eerie perspective. It wasn't just a stunt, it was a visual metaphor. Hollywood loves to promise glamour, but here was a reflection of its cruelest reality, drowning its dreamers. And the narration? Revolutionary. A dead man talking about his own fate might sound absurd on paper, but Wilder knew it would break the rules in just the right way. The cynicism in Gillis's voice connected directly to audiences who already suspected Hollywood chewed people up and spat them out. That's why it still hits like a gut punch. The brilliance of this opening lies in its honesty. It tells you up front that this story doesn't end with champagne toasts and red carpets. It ends in tragedy. By starting with death, Wilder transformed the murder mystery genre and ensured Sunset Boulevard would be remembered as one of the boldest commentaries on fame ever filmed. Touch of Evil, 1958. Orson Welles didn't just craft an opening scene. He choreographed a dance between camera, chaos, and fate. The film begins with a bomb placed in the trunk of a car, and from there, Welles launches into one of cinema's most legendary tracking shots. For 3.5 minutes, the camera glides through a bustling border town, weaving around crowds, cars, and chatter, building unbearable suspense. Every beat had to sync with perfection. Extras hitting marks, cars pulling through at the exact second, a crane operator swooping the lens over buildings without missing a moment. Welles's insistence on realism meant sound wasn't neatly mixed. Instead, overlapping voices, street noise, and mariachi music collided into a wall of anxiety. That messy authenticity makes you feel like you're in the street, complicit in the chaos. The real genius? Welles tricks you into forgetting about the bomb. You're dazzled by the technical ballet, so when the explosion finally happens, it shocks you twice. First for the violence, and second, because you forgot you were watching a ticking time bomb. Studios hated it. Executives begged him to trim the shot. Worried audiences would be confused. Welles stood his ground. Today, directors like Scorsese and De Palma point to this as a turning point in filmmaking. It proved that opening scenes could be both technical marvels and storytelling powerhouses. What makes Touch of Evil unforgettable isn't just the explosion. It's that feeling of dread Welles weaves into every second. From the start, he teaches you that in this world, the ordinary can blow up without warning. Psycho, 1960. Alfred Hitchcock opened Psycho not with blood, not with screams, but with quiet deceit. A stark on-screen caption sets the tone. Phoenix, Arizona, Friday, December 11th, 2:43 p.m. It's cold, almost clinical, like a police report. Then the camera drifts across rooftops before pushing its way into a hotel room window, forcing us to watch a private moment we weren't invited to. This voyeuristic setup is deliberate. Hitchcock makes you complicit. You become the intruder, sneaking a look at Marion Crane's stolen afternoon with her lover, Sam Loomis. At first glance, it seems like a melodrama about love, money, and obstacles to marriage. But Hitchcock isn't building a romance. He's baiting a trap. When Marion later steals money, you assume you're watching a conventional crime story. Lovers, a theft, maybe a getaway gone wrong. Instead, Hitchcock pulls the rug from under the audience with a now legendary shower scene that ends Marion's story abruptly. But that brutal twist works only because the opening scene lulls us into believing this was her story. Critics praise the opening for its documentary-like realism. That timestamp and quiet tone made the film feel authentic, almost too real, which is exactly why the horror that follows is so devastating. Hitchcock weaponized normalcy. The brilliance of Psycho's opening is its misdirection. It doesn't scream horror at you. It whispers, "This is just another human story." And then, when the knife finally comes down later, you realize Hitchcock played you from the start. Lawrence of Arabia, 1962. Imagine going to a theater expecting sprawling desert epics, and instead, the film opens with a motorcycle crash on a quiet English road. That's exactly how David Lean chose to begin Lawrence of Arabia. No golden sands, no grand battles, just T.E. Lawrence's abrupt and unglamorous death. The crash happens quickly, almost without ceremony. No swelling music, no drawn-out dramatics. Just the harsh silence of a man losing control of his bike. From there, we cut to Lawrence's memorial service, where peers argue over who he really was, genius or fraud, hero or self-promoter. Before we've even seen his adventures, his legacy is already contested. That's the trick. By stripping Lawrence of his mythic aura right at the start, Lean forces us to question everything we're about to see. Are we watching the truth, or a legend crafted by memory? The opening sets up the central theme, the gap between the man and the myth. Technically, the crash was filmed with handheld cameras, lending it documentary-like realism. It feels raw, not romanticized, and that honesty shapes how we perceive Lawrence for the rest of the 4-hour epic. Instead of starting with glory, the film starts with mortality. It was a bold inversion of epic tradition. Most films begin with a hero's rise. Lean began with a hero's end. That's why Lawrence of Arabia stands as more than just a spectacle. It's a psychological puzzle about how legends are built. And it all starts with that quiet, deadly crash. The Maltese Falcon, 1941. John Huston knew the power of a good legend. That's why The Maltese Falcon opens not with Humphrey Bogart's hard-boiled detective, but with a historical crawl. Ancient knights, bloody crusades, and the Golden Falcon's centuries-long journey flash across the screen in ornate text. Before a single character appears, the object of desire already feels mythic. Then comes the hard cut. Suddenly, we're looking at the name Spade and Archer, painted on a glass office door. Inside, Bogart's Sam Spade casually rolls a cigarette. Just like that, Huston shatters the illusion of grandeur with the smoke-filled grit of modern detective life. That jarring shift, from sweeping legend to everyday cynicism, sets up the film's central tension. A glamorous object that turns ordinary men into schemers, liars, and killers. The Falcon is no longer just a prop. It's a symbol of obsession powerful enough to warp reality. Huston's opening served two purposes. First, it educated audiences who hadn't read Dashiell Hammett's novel. Second, it elevated the MacGuffin into something bigger than treasure. By the time we learn the Falcon is a fake, the betrayal stings, because we too were swept up by its myth. Film historians credit this opening as a blueprint for modern storytelling. Think of Raiders of the Lost Ark, with its relics, or Tarantino's glowing briefcase in Pulp Fiction. They all trace back to Huston's decision to start with legend. The genius of the Maltese Falcon's opening lies in how it manipulates us. We want to believe in the grandeur of the past, only to be dragged back into the smoke and shadows of the present. North by Northwest, 1959. Before Cary Grant runs across cornfields dodging crop dusters, North by Northwest already hooked audiences with a title sequence that felt alive. Designed by Saul Bass, The credits don't just appear on the screen. They move, darting and sliding across a bright green grid, like they're trying to escape capture. For 1959, this was groundbreaking. Bass pioneered kinetic typography here, turning letters into actors. Names didn't just sit still. They charged diagonally, shot upward, then vanished, forcing the audience to chase them. The grid behind the text created a subtle sense of paranoia, like being trapped in a puzzle with no way out. Then, in one of cinema's smoothest transitions, that grid dissolves into the glass windows of a Manhattan skyscraper. Suddenly, the credits weren't abstract art anymore. They were part of the real world. Alfred Hitchcock collaborated closely with Bass to make sure the precision of the graphics matched the meticulous plotting of the film. Every line, every shift was intentional, mirroring the theme of mistaken identity and relentless pursuit that drives the story. It wasn't just style for the sake of style. This sequence told you exactly what kind of movie you were in for. Sleek, modern, sophisticated, but constantly disorienting. No one had ever seen credits behave this way before. Designers from James Bond's Maurice Binder to modern prestige TV shows have borrowed from Bass's bold innovation. What makes this opening legendary is how it transforms something audiences once ignored, the credits, into a visual event. Right from the start, North by Northwest doesn't ask politely for your attention. It grabs it, shakes it, and tells you to pay attention, because danger is already in motion. The Third Man, 1949. Most noir films open with shadowy streets and ominous horns. The Third Man does the exact opposite. Instead of dark orchestration, audiences hear Anton Karas's zither, a bright, almost playful melody plucked on an instrument most viewers had never even seen. That jaunty tune skips along as narration explains Vienna's divided, black market-ridden state after World War II. At first, it feels like a mismatch. Why pair cheerful folk music with a city drowning in corruption? But that contrast is the secret weapon. The zither doesn't deny Vienna's decay, it mocks it, dancing over cynicism with a crooked smile. Director Carol Reed stumbled upon Karas playing in a wine garden and knew immediately that the sound of Vienna wasn't strings or brass. It was this strange, homespun instrument that could sound both innocent and sly. The result was more than just a background theme. The zither became a character, embodying the contradictions of post-war Europe, old-world charm masking grim opportunism. Critics at first dismissed it as too light for the subject matter, but audiences disagreed. Karas's Third Man theme became an international hit, topping charts and selling millions. The opening, with its offbeat score and sly narration, announces that this isn't a conventional noir. It's a story where corruption wears a smile, where danger lurks under cheerful facades. By daring to subvert expectations, Reed didn't just hook his audience. He redefined what noir could sound like. That's why this opening still resonates. It's proof that breaking the rules often creates the most enduring cinematic magic. Goldfinger, 1964. James Bond films are famous for flashy openings, but it was Goldfinger that perfected the formula. Before the credits even roll, Sean Connery's Bond is already in the middle of a mini-movie, sneaking into an enemy compound, setting off an explosion, and then, in one unforgettable flourish, stripping off a wetsuit to reveal a flawless tuxedo underneath. That image alone told you everything about Bond, a man equally comfortable blowing things up and sipping champagne. And then came the one-liner that sealed the deal. After electrocuting an assassin, Connery smirks and delivers, "Shocking. Positively shocking." It's pure Bond, deadly violence punctuated by dry wit. What makes this opening brilliant is that it's completely unrelated to the film's main plot. Director Guy Hamilton wanted the first scene to be its own self-contained adventure, a curtain raiser that established Bond's world before the story truly began. That gamble paid off. Audiences loved it so much that the standalone spectacle opening became a permanent part of the franchise. Technically, the wetsuit to tuxedo trick was tougher than it looked. The crew froze the wetsuit so it looked dry, then shot the tuxedo reveal in reverse to make the fabric fall perfectly. It was movie magic built on meticulous detail. Goldfinger's opener redefined what blockbuster audiences expect. It wasn't just about starting the story. It was about delivering fireworks right out of the gate. That DNA runs through every Bond film since, not to mention imitators like Mission Impossible. Simply put, Goldfinger didn't just open a movie. It opened an entire playbook for how to thrill an audience in 3 minutes flat. Dr. Strangelove, 1964. Only Stanley Kubrick could turn nuclear war into a twisted love story. The opening of Dr. Strangelove shows U.S. Air Force bombers mid-air refueling. On paper, it's routine military footage. On screen, it's anything but. Set to a dreamy romantic arrangement of When Johnny Comes Marching Home, the planes connect and separate in slow, deliberate movements. The imagery is strangely tender, almost like an embrace. It's absurd, it's surreal, and it's unmistakably mocking. Kubrick transforms a symbol of Cold War power into something both mechanical and disturbingly intimate. This wasn't easy to film. The U.S. military didn't exactly roll out the red carpet for Kubrick's satire. The crew had to shoot from a distance, using long lenses, which accidentally gave the footage a hazy, dreamlike quality. That unintended effect made the scene feel even more surreal, as though the whole thing was a strange fantasy. What makes the opening unforgettable is the whiplash of tone. Instead of rousing patriotism, you get irony. Instead of glory, you get ridicule. The juxtaposition tells you immediately what kind of movie you're watching, one that laughs at the very institutions it's portraying. Critics at the time were divided, but the sequence has since become iconic. It's a masterclass in satire. Take something serious, strip it of dignity, and let the absurdity speak for itself. Kubrick didn't just open with airplanes. He opened with a dare, a warning that in this world, destruction is not solemn, but ridiculous. And once you accept that, you're ready for the madness to follow. 2001. A Space Odyssey, 1968. Few directors had the audacity to open a blockbuster with silence and apes. But Stanley Kubrick did. For nearly 20 minutes, 2001 A Space Odyssey offers no dialogue. Instead, you watch early hominids scraping by in a harsh, prehistoric landscape. It's slow, it's patient, and it demands your full attention. Then comes the monolith. A sleek, black rectangle appears among the rocks, alien and perfect in its geometry. Its presence sparks curiosity, fear, and ultimately, transformation. When one of the apes realizes a bone can be used as a weapon, cinema itself shifts. The moment is punctuated by one of the greatest cuts in film history. A bone tossed into the air seamlessly transforms into an orbiting satellite millions of years later. In that single edit, Kubrick compressed the entire history of human progress, from primitive tools to space technology. No exposition, no dialogue, just pure visual storytelling. It's audacious, almost arrogant, but it works. At the time, many critics were baffled. Some called it boring, others called it genius. But what's undeniable is its influence. Directors from Terrence Malick to Denis Villeneuve have chased the kind of wordless, meditative power Kubrick unleashed in those first 20 minutes. The opening of 2001 isn't just an introduction, it's a philosophy lesson. It forces you to confront evolution, technology, and destiny without a single line spoken. It's not entertainment in the traditional sense. It's cinema as a grand, visual sermon on what it means to be human. And if you were still in your seat after that opening, you knew you were ready for whatever mind-bending journey Kubrick had in store. Jaws, 1975. It starts with a girl running into the ocean for a midnight swim. The camera dips beneath the water, and suddenly, we're no longer watching, we're stalking. John Williams' two-note score begins, simple yet terrifying, as something unseen circles below. Then it strikes. She thrashes, screams, and is yanked violently under the surface. Silence. The audience is left gripping their armrests, shaken before the story even starts. What makes the opening of Jaws so effective isn't just the attack itself, but what Spielberg withholds. We never see the shark. Instead, we see the girl's body jerked across the water, her voice echoing across the dark beach. The unseen predator becomes infinitely more terrifying than any rubber shark prop ever could. Williams's music does the rest, transforming two notes into a symbol of pure dread. Spielberg was only in his 20s when he made Jaws. Yet he understood a basic truth of horror. Imagination is scarier than reality. By letting the audience conjure the monster in their own minds, he weaponized fear itself. The result? Audiences were hooked before the credits even finished. That one scene convinced people not to go back into the water for years. It didn't just open a film, it changed summer forever. The concept of the summer blockbuster was born right there, in those opening minutes of terror. The genius of Jaws lies in its simplicity. A beach, an ocean, a girl, and two notes of music. Nothing else needed. Sometimes the scariest thing a movie can do is show you almost nothing at all. The Godfather, 1972. The very first line of The Godfather is unforgettable. "I believe in America." Delivered by Undertaker Amerigo Bonacera, it sets the tone for everything that follows. His face fills the screen as he begs Don Corleone for justice after the courts fail him. The shot is tight, intimate, almost claustrophobic. You can see the sweat on his brow, the fear in his eyes. Then the camera slowly pulls back, revealing the shadowy figure of Marlon Brando's Don Vito Corleone. He doesn't raise his voice. He doesn't bark commands. He listens, quietly, as a desperate man pleads for vengeance. And when Corleone finally speaks, it's with the calm authority of someone who doesn't need to shout to dominate the room. Francis Ford Coppola crafted this opening like a statement of intent. Instead of starting with violence, he starts with business, because for the Corleones, murder is business. By making the first scene about favors, respect, and power dynamics, he sets the tone for a film less about gangsters with guns and more about a family empire run like royalty. Cinematographer Gordon Willis, nicknamed the Prince of Darkness, drenched the scene in shadow. Light falls only where it needs to, creating a world where morality itself seems murky. Audiences instantly understood this wasn't just another crime movie, it was Shakespeare in the underworld. The brilliance of this opening lies in its restraint. With just two men in a dark room, Coppola creates more tension and gravity than a dozen shootouts ever could. By the end of that first scene, viewers knew they weren't watching a gangster flick. They were watching a masterpiece. Star Wars, 1977. No film opening has ever blasted audiences into a new universe quite like Star Wars. First comes the now legendary text crawl, tilted against the stars, laying out a galactic civil war in pulpy detail. Then, silence breaks with a thunderous musical cue as John Williams' score explodes into full force. But the real jaw-dropper is the next image. A small rebel ship streaks across the screen, chased by something bigger. And then it keeps going, and going, and going. The massive Star Destroyer consumes the entire frame, dwarfing the rebel ship, and in that moment, audiences instantly understood the scale of George Lucas's galaxy. This wasn't a B-movie with cardboard sets. This was myth-making on an epic scale. Lucas deliberately shot the sequence to feel overwhelming. The angle of the camera, the length of the ship, the sheer detail in the model, it all combined to create a sense of awe no audience in 1977 had experienced before. Remember, this was an era of small, grounded dramas. Suddenly, the future didn't just look real. It looked terrifyingly vast. That opening battle was more than spectacle. It told a story in seconds. Rebels outmatched, empires unstoppable, and hope fragile but alive. Lucas gave us the stakes before a single character spoke a word. The opening of Star Wars wasn't just good, it was revolutionary. It announced a new era in filmmaking, where imagination had no ceiling, and adventure truly happened in galaxies far, far away. Apocalypse Now, 1979. Jungle trees sway gently in the breeze. Then, faintly, you hear it. The chop of helicopter blades. Suddenly, napalm erupts across the screen. The sky turns orange, and the doors, haunting the end, seeps in. This is how Francis Ford Coppola begins Apocalypse Now, with war as both spectacle and nightmare. The opening isn't straightforward action. It's a fever dream, blending Captain Willard's inner torment with the chaos of Vietnam. We see his face superimposed against the burning jungle, trapped in a hotel room, already unraveling before his mission even begins. The blades of the helicopters blur into the ceiling fan above his bed, linking his personal madness to the broader insanity of war. Coppola didn't want realism in this opening. He wanted hallucination. By layering music, sound effects, and surreal imagery, he creates a mood of dread and disorientation that carries through the entire film. You're not sure what's real, what's memory, or what's nightmare. And that's exactly the point. Audiences in 1979 were stunned. This wasn't a patriotic war film. It was a plunge into darkness, a descent into chaos right from the start. The opening told them this story wasn't about battles won or lost. It was about the destruction of the human soul. In just a few minutes, Coppola made Vietnam feel less like history and more like purgatory. And that's why the opening remains one of the most haunting in cinema history. Goodfellas, 1990. The first words of Goodfellas say it all. As far back as I can remember, I always wanted to be a gangster. Then, almost immediately, we're thrown into the trunk of a car. Inside lies a bloodied man, still alive, begging for mercy. Joe Pesci and Robert De Niro's characters finish the job brutally, and Ray Liotta's Henry Hill casually lights a cigarette as if nothing happened. It's shocking, it's violent, and it's oddly casual. Director Martin Scorsese knew exactly what he was doing. Instead of easing the audience into Henry's life, he dropped them straight into the brutality, then let Henry's smooth narration guide us through the madness. That contrast, horror on screen, calm explanation in voiceover, makes the opening unforgettable. The editing is sharp, the freeze frame iconic, and the narration instantly sets the rhythm of the film. Henry Hill isn't just telling his story. He's seducing you, pulling you into the glamorous yet horrifying world of organized crime. Critics hailed this opening as a masterclass in tone setting. In just a few minutes, Scorsese gives us the entire thesis. Crime looks cool, feels cool, but is soaked in blood. The audience doesn't get to warm up. They're dunked headfirst into violence, laughter, and complicity. The genius of the Goodfellas opener is how it establishes intimacy. Henry talks to you like a friend sharing secrets. And before you know it, you're along for the ride, no matter how ugly it gets. There you have it. 15 openings that didn't just start movies, they burned themselves into cinematic history. From dead narrators in swimming pools to spaceships that stretched across the sky, these directors understood one thing. The first few minutes can make or break everything. So now it's your turn. Which opening scene grabbed you and never let go? Drop it in the comments, hit subscribe, and share this with a fellow movie buff. Because remember, in cinema, sometimes the first shot is the knockout punch.